The day my dog disappeared started like any other quiet Canadian morning, the kind where the frost still clings to the grass and the street feels half asleep. I remember opening the door to let Max out, coffee still warming my hands, expecting to hear the familiar jingle of his collar and the soft thud of his paws on the porch. Instead, there was nothing. The leash hook was empty. The gate was slightly open, and my chest tightened with a fear so sudden it felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Max wasn't just a dog. He was a retired military service dog, trained overseas and later partnered with me when I left the forces. He had been through more than most people ever would. Loud noises didn't scare him, chaos didn't shake him, but he was gentle in a way that made children trust him instantly. In our small HOA-controlled neighborhood, people noticed him. Some admired him, others complained. They complained about his size, his presence, the way he looked intimidating, even though he never barked unless something was truly wrong. When I started asking around, doors closed quickly. Neighbors avoided eye contact. One woman mumbled that the HOA had been handling the situation. That word hit me hard. Handling. Like Max was a problem to be solved instead of a living being. I went straight to the HOA office, my hands shaking, my voice cracking as I asked where my dog was. The president, a woman who had fined me before for leaving my garbage bin out too long, looked at me with a thin smile and said Max had been removed for community safety concerns. I felt anger rise, but beneath it was something worse. Fear. Max had separation training, yes, but being taken by strangers, locked somewhere unfamiliar, that wasn't something he deserved. I tried to explain who he was, what he had done, the service medals I kept in a drawer at home, the nights he had woken me from nightmares without making a sound. She shrugged and said paperwork had already been filed. That night, I sat on my living room floor, Max's blanket folded in my arms, and felt smaller than I ever had in combat zones. I called every shelter in the city. No one had him. I barely slept, listening for footsteps that weren't there anymore. The next morning, I called an old friend, someone who knew Max from our service days. He reminded me, gently but firmly, that Max wasn't just any dog. He was registered, documented, protected by law. Things moved quickly after that. A formal complaint was filed. A veteran advocacy group got involved. Suddenly, the HOA wasn't so confident. They claimed it was a misunderstanding, that Max had been temporarily relocated. Those words didn't erase the fact that he'd been taken without consent. When I finally learned where he was, a private kennel on the outskirts of town, I drove there in silence, my heart pounding louder with every kilometer. When Max saw me, he didn't bark. He didn't hesitate. He stood, locked eyes with me, and then walked forward like he had been trained to do thousands of times before. Calm, steady, loyal. The handler at the kennel looked stunned when I told her who he was. She admitted she'd been told he was aggressive, dangerous. She said she'd never seen a dog sit so still, so composed, even in a strange place. The fallout was intense. The HOA faced legal consequences, fines, and public scrutiny. Neighbors who had stayed silent suddenly apologized. Some admitted they'd been afraid of what they didn't understand. Others said nothing at all. I didn't care. What mattered was Max was home. But the real moment that stayed with me happened weeks later, on a snowy evening walk. A child from down the street ran up, asking if Max was back for good. I nodded. She hugged him without fear, burying her face in his thick fur. Max stood there, patient as ever, watching the world like he always had, protecting without being asked. The HOA didn't know who they were dealing with when they took him. Not because Max was dangerous, but because he represented something they couldn't control. Loyalty, service, quiet strength. In a world full of rules and paperwork, he reminded me that some bonds don't need approval to be real. By the end of it all, I realized the story wasn't just about a stolen dog or an overreaching HOA. It was about standing up when something precious is taken, even when your voice shakes. It was about remembering that heroes don't always wear uniforms anymore. Sometimes, they walk beside us on a leash, carrying their past with dignity, asking only for a safe place to rest. Max sleeps at my feet again now. And every time I hear his steady breathing, I know that no rulebook, no committee, and no fear-driven decision can ever take away what we've earned together.